welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drew B. Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing it to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest show on earth. Doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can make an amazing life in sales. And today's guest is no stranger to the journey. It's my friend, Miss Stephanie Hayes. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Drewby. So nice to see you again.
I know, what a funny coinkydink that you would schedule this months out ahead of time, and then we just happen to be on two shows in the same day. So it's going to be fun. I already know you're an awesome person, but I want the crowd to hear your favorite sales story.
All right. Well, it's not super, funny, but I think there's a lesson in here. What I've learned about selling over, many years, I think we're the same age, I think within days of each other, is that selling is a human activity, right? And we always try to make sales into some type of competition or something to win. And I spent the first, most of my career in the technology industry, and we would sell technology services, we would sell technology products, and we had one customer that was, pretty tough nut to crack. And they were corporate, they were sort of, traditional industry, blah, blah, blah. So my male colleagues, the owner of the company and, another colleague, the funniest thing was we were going into a sales meeting, and it was just so hard for them to get this customer to say yes. And the owner of the company actually turned to me and he goes, "I don't want you to talk in this meeting. You haven't learned how to talk to customers yet." And I'm like, "Pardon?" I was probably 28 at the time. I'd been, through the .com, I was incubating companies. I knew how to talk to customers. And I was taken aback. I was like, what is going on? Because there's this real culture in the technology industry or like in male dominated industries where it was just like, yeah, go in and fight and be competitive and, win at all costs. And that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to be hard. They were trying to be like, fight, fight, fight. And we went in there and of course I didn't talk and they got nowhere. And at the end of the meeting, I stayed a little bit afterwards and I spoke to one of the women who was the decision maker. And we were just talking about stuff, like nothing super related to the work, but we were connecting, right? We were connecting. We were just engaging. And she started talking to me about, the meeting we had just had and what have you. And I said, one of the things that I noticed when we were talking was blah, blah, blah. And I kind of steered us back to the conversation around the work. And she said, yeah, there's a really important piece of this project that we never really talked about. And it's really sensitive. And there's this, but nobody had ever even, picked up on that and kind of gone into that. And I said, yeah, I noticed that. And so we ended up talking for another half hour. And by the end of that conversation, she's like, let's take this proposal. She walked with me. She said, let's take this proposal to the CEO. And we got it signed. And it was from that day forward that I realized that, there's a real delineation between what we're taught as salespeople, Glengarry, Glen Ross kind of thing, where it's a big competition and it's us versus them. Whereas when I used my intuition and, what I'm going to go out on a limb and say is sort of my feminine energy and just leaned into who this person was, it made all of the difference because she was waiting for someone to hear her and she was waiting for someone to say, I get what the problem actually is here. And I get it. And this is what we've done before to kind of get around that. And then all of her fears and her, the things that she was worried about kind of went away because she knew that we had, seen it and done it before and we had a solution. But that never came up because nobody was paying attention and nobody was listening. So that it always stuck out to me as one of the sort of pivotal sales experiences that I had in my career, where I realized that I needed to stop listening to what I was hearing from my male counterparts, where it was show up and be the one who's going to hold the line and call the shots, and just go in there and with some empathy and listen and hear what's actually happening, to these people who are making the decision. Because at the end of the day, it's still a person that's making the decision.
There's so many things about this that I want to pick out of there. The number one thing right off the rip, though, is you said a word I love: empathy. And I think that's something that so many sales professionals forget to utilize in their tool belt. They've got the talk paths, they've got the scripts, they've got the hard hitting proposal that some people have discounts. But the empathy is the true secret here, because until someone really knows that you care, they don't care how much you know. And so I absolutely love that you lean in on that, because that is, you can call it feminine energy, you call it whatever you want, but in my opinion, that is the true secret to building relationships, is getting people to know that you genuinely care about them. And it's not always about them succeeding. It's genuine, like as you said, it was just stuff. It was just connection. And that is something that it's so powerful. And I think a lot of men in the sales industry forget to utilize, because they've been taught their whole life to be strong, to be powerful, to be the aggressor. And a lot of times, all you got to do is just get on the same side of the table as someone so that they see you're headed in the same direction. And so I'd be curious, is that something that you still see these days in a lot of, like, is it still like the male domination, or do you think that there's starting to be an opening for the females to really come in and be successful in the sales world?
You're asking me this at the wrong time, because I'm just right in the middle of of one of these sort of old white men calling the shots. Won't listen to me, but will listen to my white male counterpart, who is the same age and has the same experience, and we've grown up together in the industry. So there's a little bit of, yes, I do think that that still kind of happens and it exists, but I don't spend a lot of time in that world anymore. What's interesting is I have a whole podcast episode I did about this, but this sort of like recognition, acknowledgement, and the growth of that power that I have, which is very feminine. It's very, it's very intuitive, and I just started doing what felt right, and then that would get me results. Now I work almost primarily with women, and I work with women who are building businesses, and at all sort of levels, right? I work with founders who are looking to make seven-figure exits. I work with people who are just starting out, and it's so interesting, because in the digital online marketing space, um, you when you learn how to figure out like a customer journey, it's called an empathy map, right? And when we understand what people are thinking, sort of feeling, saying, doing as they're moving through those phases of a sales process, education, awareness, and decision making, and all that kind of stuff, you're inside the head of your customer. And these guys get really wrapped up in that, and they need to go through that process, but then they want a script. So not everybody's sort of comfortable with selling, and they want a script. And you and I talked about this earlier today, but the script can give them some comfort, but what ends up happening is that they try to dominate the conversation when they get into a sales conversation. And so instead, I say, like, look, sales is actually pretty easy. If you're feeling uncomfortable with it going into a sales conversation, if you're worried about what to do, just ask questions. Like, just let them talk. Just start the sales conversation and just say, so tell me what's going on. The customer's going to offload to you all the stuff that they are struggling with. They're going to give you all the information you need to turn that pitch around and to be able to align your offer to exactly what they're concerned about. There's so much good information in asking questions, and that makes sales so much easier. So I think, yes, seeing it in droves, how being able to listen and use that intuition is the most powerful sales tool that you're ever going to have.
I love that. And, I've had the pleasure of speaking with some powerhouse women that come from the sales world that have had to deal with a lot of that, um, just being kind of underappreciated, in that they bring a special power to the room. And I think that's what's cool about sales is, like I said earlier, anyone can be successful in sales if you can really hone in on your craft and stay focused on getting the individual you're working with the actual result that they're looking for. And so for with the business that you're in, helping these women and really leaning in on that, what made you decide to niche down that way and say, hey, this is going to be the person who I'm going to help?
It was a real shift for me to move out of like the technology sector, but I was missing like that empathy. I was missing that ability to use that intuition and to really like even in the technology consulting I do right now, I still end up always going to the people. And like the reason that something, a technology strategy is not working inside of a big organization is often the people and the lack of understanding about the people. And so, I kind of ended up in this world. I have a master's degree in the management of technology, but I am now a business strategist and I work with, individuals who are, successful women who have built businesses. I don't work exclusively with women, but mostly. And I'll tell you, it's like it's just a different world. And I very intentionally in my sales process, though I know how to handle objections and I've been through all the training and I've had all the experience, doing launch sales and that kind of thing, I will never use pressure in my sales. If I've done a good job of creating demand and meeting a need, I usually don't have to even deal with objections. Like that's the idea is you want to get them there so that you don't even get to objections. And objections are usually based on fear, right? Fear of being wrong or fear of being judged or fear of like, I just don't feel confident in myself. So it's my job to help them borrow my confidence until they
Mm.
can see it themselves, right?
I love that, and to me, this is what I love about sales. Is I'm one of those people. I don't like to be a pushy. Gotta close it on the first conversation. If you don't sell them, then they're worthless, and don't ever call them back. I'm a big believer in if you deliver value and you genuinely care about people, they're not going to have the objections. Or if they do, it's usually surface level, just kind of like they're feeling you out to make sure that you're not just there to try to sell them something. They just want to know, like, hey, does this person actually care about me? Are they just going to hard pitch me once we get to the end? Because there's a lot of people that are really great about, like, oh, yeah, we're going to do all these things and we're going to take care of you. And then, hey, here's the invoice I need you to pay. And
Yeah.
then once they've paid, they just completely on to the next person. And I don't subscribe to that. I like to build relationships with my clients because to me it's not about the first sale, it's about how many people can we help via proxy with this person, whether they're coming back to buy from me multiple times or they're so excited about the process that we went through that they're literally like, hey, even if this isn't the right fit for me, I know 5 or 10 people who this would be a great fit for that I want to send your way. So
Yeah.
how do you like to work with people in that sense? Like maybe you run into somebody where you're genuinely like, I don't think this is the right fit. How do you then kind of point them in the right direction from there? Because not all business is good business. So like what would be your step in that process?
No, I can remember like distinctly getting on a call last year, and I don't even know how this lady found me, but the minute I got on the call, I was just like, nah. It like there's just something that's just not congruent here. And I can always tell when someone's going to be difficult because they're like, they're what they're focused on and what they're prioritizing, that and that's fine. Like they'd be a great client for someone else, but just not for me. And, I added value. I was honest. I gave them as much information as I thought. And I really was very truthful for them in terms of what's going to serve them. And she kept kind of going, well, can we make a date in, July where we can reconvene? And I'm like, yeah, maybe. I said, but I think at this point in time, like you're better served by doing X, Y, and Z. And she was kind of like, oh. And I said, yeah. And I'm happy to, introduce you to somebody who can do those things for you. But, what I have going for me is that I can very quickly assess what somebody actually needs versus what they're saying that they need. And I just have lots of experience, right, to be able to do that. And so like I want to be honest with them and I want to tell them what it is that is going to be their most beneficial next step and it's not working with me, right? So there are definitely ways to show up and be like a consultant almost and be super truthful with those folks. That doesn't involve saying you sound like you're going to be a pain in the ass to work with and so I don't want to work with you, right? Uh, but that's just experience. And I think once we get out of the mindset that we have to close every sale, um, I say that to the people I'm coaching all the time. I'm like, you don't need to close every sale. A sales conversation is as much an interview for you as it is for them, right? You're assessing whether this is going to be a good fit. Because if it's not going to be a good fit, the best sales tool you have in your chest is to do a really good job with your clients, right? Is to deliver amazing results and deliver services, because then you get referrals and then you can speak to the experiences and yada, 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 right? I bought a business a couple of years ago, and the very, very first thing that I did was focus on building the community up, because the community had just withered and it wasn't the previous owner's forte or interest. And we've been doing that for a couple of years now, is really building this incredibly strong community inside of our business. And these people would die for us, right? They will and there's a really interesting post that was just made by someone where she said, rather than trying to, go out there and run ads and everything that we've been doing traditionally, make your community sell for you. And I'm like, that's brilliant, right? And so when we can deliver amazing results, that's like a sales tool in itself, right? Is to know your stuff and to be really, really good at it. So when someone shows up who's just not going to succeed, I just deflect them. I just give them really honest advice, and I send them in another direction. But there's another part of sales that's all about energy. And if I show up on a call with you and my energy is like, mm, it's probably not going to result. You're not making them feel something that is exciting. And I think my energy was just generally low anyway. So we just kind of went this way and that was fine. Right. But I think being honest with yourself and knowing that not every conversation has to end in a sale. That's the first part of valuing yourself as a service provider as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack from that because there are people who are like, well, I've got to sell, 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 and a lot of times I'll tell clients, listen, if we turned on a marketing campaign and 100 people showed up tomorrow with their credit card out, it would absolutely disrupt and destroy your business. You're not ready for that anyway, so you don't have to sell everyone with a credit card and a pulse because it will probably break you. Secondly, I call them raving fans. And sometimes the ability to just be brutally honest with someone will turn them into a raving fan. And as you were saying, that's the community that will go out and they'll sell for you. They'll see a post on Facebook or on Instagram and they'll be like, oh, you should totally go and talk to Stephanie. She can definitely help you. And all of a sudden you wake up and your notifications aren't, people like engaging with you. It's them tagging you on someone else's content and being like, hey, you should talk to this person. You should reach out and have a conversation with this person. I think there's so much value to that a lot of people are forgetting about. And the community, the network, the people around you, they will do so much more for you when they genuinely believe that they can come to you with their questions and know that you're going to shoot them straight. And
One
so
of
I go ahead.
no, carry on. Sorry, I thought you were done.
No, I can be done. I want to hear what you have to say. You obviously have something important, so let's hear it.
Well, I don't know how. Maybe I would say like one of my most consistent referral sources was a lady who I had a sales call with probably like 10 years ago, and we never ended up working together. She decided to go with someone else and what have you. We just had a really great, honest conversation, and she keeps sending people to me even now. So I've had
I,
more customers come from her referral than from any other one person, and we never worked together.
I love that. I have someone in my life, Dr. B. He just passed away not too long ago. Rest in peace, Dr. B. But same deal. He and I spoke. It could have been a good fit, but he was like, I don't know. Like, I like you, but I'm not sure if I feel, how I feel about the other side of it. But like, I definitely know a lot of people that would want to do this. And that dude sent me close to $1 million in business. We never worked together. Like, we became friends. And obviously, there was other stuff we ended up working on in the big picture, but never did business personally one to one. Guy sent me $1 million in revenue. Just insane how that works.
Yeah. And there's a nuanced side to this too, right? There are like different ways of selling, and I do a lot of just one-on-one sort of high ticket selling, but there's also the whole, deal around time-based, launch-based selling, when you are running a big program that requires everybody to start at the same time. totally, that's a different type of selling. And that's where you do really benefit from a playbook, and where you really do benefit from understanding objections and finding that right balance between, putting the pressure on to get a sale, because it is an actual real timeline pressure. And a lot of people need timelines to make a decision. But without being like icky, right? And is definitely that category of, probably pretty effective salespeople who can close. But I find there are so many people come out of those programs who feel resentful that they got sold. And I just never ever want to run a business like that. So, I've worked on launch teams, and I've been the closer on launch teams. And I think there's a way to do that. And it's all about building that relationship and that connection with the person right from the beginning, because you have a limited amount of time to make that sale and to make that close. And by the time that they're ready to buy, you're their friend. And so they know that you're going to, and I've told people during some of those launch events that I don't think this program is right for them, and it's probably better if they go do something else. And that's fine as well. So you have to build up that relationship of trust with them, so that's one of the most effective tools you can use in closing, is that you've been very honest with them about something. And I remember a lady who was like, I kept telling her, like, I don't think this is for you. And she kept, like, the more I would say it's not for you, the more she wanted to join. Right. And she ended up joining. Right. But, it like, you just can't beat that, especially over the long term. I have so many clients that come to me and they were like, oh, I got sold into this $30,000 high ticket mastermind where someone had all the answers for me. And they were like, look, that shit just doesn't work. Okay. And so, and then they would be so unhappy and so upset, but guaranteed they got sold because they were at an event, and the pack mentality and the enthusiasm and the energy and the probably the closers were there to try and like make that happen. I just don't know when that works. And it works from the perspective of, if your metric is how many sales did you close. But, like, so many people are focused on the sales process and that metric, and then don't even think about the effectiveness or the value they're creating with what they eventually end up delivering, right? And that's going to hurt you over the long run.
One of the things that I run into a lot, because call the damn leads kind of speaks to people that are in the business, is you get on a call with someone that's like, oh, I've got a 70 to 80% close rate. And I already know they're blowing smoke, because like most people that say that don't actually track their metrics in any sort of real fashion. They're just throwing a number out there. But then I'll say something like, all right, well, what's your chargeback rate? How many people are actually successful in your programs? Because you can be a great closer, but like, how many people actually show up excited to do the thing that you're selling them versus feel like, oh, I just bought it because the guy kind of made me feel guilty about, like, well, he told me if I didn't do this, it would kill my family, or some crazy. You hear some of the craziest stuff out there. But I love how you lean in on like that resentment is such a real thing. People will buy just to get off the phone with you because they feel so icky. And that's where it really leads to a lot of the chargebacks and cancellations. And nothing is worse than seeing a chargeback come through on your thing and being like, but multiple is where you know that someone was genuinely just trying to sell someone versus trying to help them. And I know we've kind of connected over that service based sales will genuinely lead to the most success. So I love that you were able to eloquently lay that out there for the listeners. It's a really big thing.
Yeah, it totally is. And I've like hung out in these ads communities where, like, a bunch of ad bros in there, and they're just like, the conversion rate. And like, that's all they talk about. And I'm like, but what are you delivering on the back end, right? That's a diminishing returns type of model. And I think, the other value, the other skill that you can have in sales is to be really, like, believe really strongly in what you do. Because when you can show up and believe really strongly in what you do, I mean, that, like, sales again is an exchange of energy in it. And if I, here's what I hear a lot. Like, I don't want to be like a used car salesman. Like, I don't want to be promoting. Women are taught that their value is in being nice. You think about somebody passes away, it's a woman, and they're like, oh, she was so nice, right? Asking
Mm.
people for money is not nice. And so when you are first starting out, and every one of them has this rejection of selling because they think they have to be super gross and icky. And I tell them this story. You are providing a service to somebody that someone needs, right? So I got diagnosed with like this weird thing, respiratory issue that was quite uncommon. And so there was nobody here that really knew how to deal with it. And I started looking online, and there was a woman who was in Florida, and she was a nurse, and she ended up getting diagnosed with the same thing. And she's like, okay, I know how to deal with this. It's like some weird thing. It's actually a neurological thing. You have to retrain your brain how to breathe properly. So she built a whole course on it. I was so relieved. Like, finally, somebody had an answer for me, or had some. Imagine if she had not done anything to try and like put her product out there and to let people know that she exists. I would still be dealing with this same issue. So it's the same kind of thing. Like, unless you think you're a scammer, like that you're trying to produce something that really is going to hurt people, you're doing something because you genuinely think it's helpful, because you genuinely have a service to offer to somebody or a product that's going to really help them. So why would you not show up to be like, I can help you to solve someone's problem? Somebody out there is going to be like, thank goodness you exist, because you're a purple-haired, neurodivergent, feminist, whatever, and that's somebody I can relate to, right? And you're my people, and you exist out there for me. So if you stay hidden and you don't sell, you are doing a disservice to all the people that really need you, right? So that exchange of energy is such an important thing to try and remember.
Amen. And I think this is one of those things that's really important for the listener to understand is you will find your tribe. And if you're putting out good energy, you will attract good energy. If you're in your own head being like, well, is this really, am I scamming people or whatever? That's what's going to come across. And so, Stephanie, while I know we could probably nerd out for the next several hours, and we did have a chance to nerd out earlier, so I want to be respectful of your time, though. What's the best way for me and the listeners who are vibing with you and want to learn more about you to come and find you, follow your content, check you out, etc.?
Well, I'm going to take a page out of your book, Derby, and I thought what you said on our previous show was amazing. First of all, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it. Please tag us in the episode and say, I got value from this. And then secondly, if you want to connect with me directly, you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can go to my website, which is stephaniehayes.biz, and connect with me there. I'm a very down-to-earth person. I really love to have conversations. I like to get to know people. So I'm totally open to, any type of connections that come up. And I think we're all better off when we know each other. So just hunt me down.
I love that. Thank you so much for taking some time out of you to be here with us, for sharing some of your journey, for helping others see that there are a lot of ways to be successful in sales. But if you focus on service, that's going to be one of the number one things to help propel you to that next level. And so if you guys, you heard her, if you enjoyed the show, share it on social media, tag us, tell your friends, tell your family, maybe send it to someone who's like really crappy at sales because you want to help them. Send them this episode. They're going to get a ton of value out of it. And if you're in sales and you have an awesome story that you'd like to share, and you know that in your heart of hearts, you've got something that can help someone by hearing your story, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details. Let's get you booked on the show. Let's have a conversation, and let's let the world know how you can help them. Because at the end of the day, when you can help people solve a problem, they'll pay you for it. And the bigger the problem you solve, the more they want to pay. So you guys know what to do next. Go call your damn leads. Have yourselves a great day. We'll see you on the next one.